Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. The hospital room felt sterile and cold as Ryland opened his eyes, squinting against the harsh fluorescent lights. His head throbbed, and a dull ache radiated through his body. Memories of the accident flooded back, the screeching tires, the sickening crunch of metal, and then darkness. He'd been trying to prove something, hadn't he? His father's disappointed face flashed in his mind, always pushing him to be tougher, more masculine. The reckless stunt was supposed to show he had what it took. Instead, he'd landed himself here. A nurse bustled in, checking his vitals. "How are you feeling, hun?" she asked kindly. Ryland tried to speak, but his throat felt raw. He managed a weak croak. "Don't strain yourself," the nurse advised. "You've been through quite an ordeal. Just rest for now. The doctor will be in soon to discuss your treatment plan." Treatment plan? Ryland's brow furrowed in confusion. Surely a few broken bones didn't require that much. But exhaustion pulled at him before he could ponder it further. His eyes drifted shut as he slipped back into a fitful sleep. Hours or days later, he couldn't be sure, Ryland awoke to hushed voices. His parents stood near the foot of the bed, speaking in urgent whispers with a man in a white coat. His mother was crying softly. "What's going on?" Ryland rasped, struggling to sit up. 3 heads whipped toward him. His father's face was ashen, his mother's tear-stained. The doctor cleared his throat nervously. "Ryland, I'm Dr. Patel. I'm afraid there's been a complication with your treatment." A chill ran down Ryland's spine. "What kind of complication?" Dr. Patel exchanged glances with Ryland's parents before continuing. "Due to a medication error, you were given extremely high doses of estrogen over an extended period of time. The effects have been significant." Ryland's heart began to race. "What does that mean? What kind of effects?" The doctor's voice was gentle but clinical. "The hormones have triggered changes in your body chemistry and physical appearance. Essentially, your body has begun transitioning to female." The words hit Ryland like a punch to the gut. He looked down at himself in horror, noticing for the first time the slight swell of breasts beneath his hospital gown. His hands flew to his face, feeling the softened angles of his jaw and cheekbones. "No," he whispered. "This can't be happening. You have to fix this." Dr. Patel's expression was grave. "I'm so sorry, but the changes are irreversible at this point. We can offer hormone therapy to maintain your male characteristics, but it would be a lifelong struggle with significant health risks." Ryland's mother let out a choked sob. His father's jaw clenched as he spoke. "What are our options here?" The doctor took a deep breath. "Given the extent of the changes and the potential complications of trying to reverse course, our recommendation would be to move forward with transitioning. The hospital is prepared to cover all associated medical costs, as well as offer a settlement for the error." Ryland felt like he was drowning, struggling to process the doctor's words. "You want me to become a woman? But I'm not. I can't." His protests died on his lips as he caught sight of his reflection in the window. The face staring back at him was undeniably feminine, delicate features framed by shoulder-length hair that had grown out during his hospital stay. A strangled sound escaped his throat. The next few days passed in a blur of medical consultations and legal discussions. Ryland retreated into himself, barely speaking as decisions were made around him. His parents argued in hushed tones about what was best for their son, or now daughter. In the end, faced with the reality of Ryland's changed body and the potential health risks of fighting it, they reluctantly agreed to move forward with the transition. The papers were signed, settlements arranged. And just like that, Ryland ceased to exist. In his place was Riley, a name chosen by his mother in a tearful attempt at acceptance. Riley was released from the hospital a week later, her new body still a source of constant discomfort and alienation. She flinched every time she caught sight of her reflection, averting her eyes from the stranger staring back at her. The car ride home was tense and silent. Her father's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, jaw clenched as he determinedly avoided looking at his now daughter. Her mother kept shooting worried glances back at Riley, opening her mouth as if to speak before thinking better of it. Riley curled in on herself in the back seat, arms wrapped protectively around her unfamiliar chest. She wanted nothing more than to wake up from this nightmare, to be Ryland again. But the soft curves of her body were an inescapable reminder that this was her new reality. As they pulled into the driveway of their suburban home, panic clawed at Riley's throat. How could she face the neighbors, her friends? Everyone would know what had happened to her. She'd be a freak, an outcast. "We don't have to do this now," her mother said softly, noticing Riley's distress. "We can wait until you're ready." Riley shook her head. As much as she wanted to hide away forever, she knew prolonging it would only make things worse. "Let's just get it over with," she mumbled. Taking a deep breath, she opened the car door and stepped out on shaky legs. The November air was crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Such a normal, familiar smell, at odds with how alien everything else felt. She'd taken only a few steps toward the house when a voice called out, "Hey, welcome home! We've missed you around here." Riley froze, her heart pounding. She turned to see Mrs. Henderson, their elderly neighbor, waving from her porch next door. The old woman's eyes widened as she took in Riley's appearance. "Oh, my," Mrs. Henderson breathed. "I'm so sorry. I thought you were... Is Ryland still in the hospital?" Riley's mouth went dry. She looked pleadingly at her parents, silently begging them to take over. Her mother stepped forward, forcing a smile. "Actually, Mrs. Henderson, there's been a change. This is our daughter, Riley. There was an incident at the hospital, and, well, it's a long story." Mrs. Henderson's brow furrowed in confusion, but to her credit, she rallied quickly. "Oh, well then, welcome home, Riley, dear. My goodness, what a lovely young lady you've become." The kindness in the old woman's voice brought unexpected tears to Riley's eyes. She managed a wobbly smile and a quiet "thank you" before hurrying into the house. Once inside, Riley made a beeline for her bedroom, desperate for some semblance of familiarity. But even this sanctuary felt wrong now. Sports posters and action figures seemed to mock her from the walls and shelves. She sank onto the bed, burying her face in her hands. How was she supposed to live like this? Everything she'd known about herself, every plan for the future, it had all been ripped away in an instant. A soft knock at the door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. "Riley," her mother called. "Can I come in?" Riley considered refusing, but ultimately mumbled an assent. Her mother entered hesitantly, perching on the edge of the bed. "I know this is overwhelming," she began. "I can't even imagine what you're going through. But I want you to know that we're here for you, sweetheart. We'll figure this out together." Riley lifted her head, meeting her mother's concerned gaze. "How?" she asked, voice cracking. "How am I supposed to just be a girl now? I don't know how to do this, Mom." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. She reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind Riley's ear. "Oh, honey, none of us know what we're doing, really. We'll learn together, okay? One day at a time." For the first time since waking up in the hospital, Riley felt a tiny spark of hope. She leaned into her mother's embrace, letting out a shuddering breath. "Okay," she whispered. "One day at a time." The next few weeks were a crash course in femininity as Riley struggled to adapt to her new body and social role. Simple tasks like getting dressed became ordeals. She fumbled with bra clasps and stared helplessly at the array of unfamiliar products cluttering the bathroom counter. Her mother did her best to guide her, but there was an awkwardness to their interactions now. Years of mother-son bonding didn't translate seamlessly to a mother-daughter relationship. They were both trying, but it was clear they were in uncharted territory. Riley's father was even more at a loss. He'd always connected with his daughter through traditionally masculine pursuits: sports, cars, woodworking. Now he seemed unsure how to relate to Riley at all. Their interactions were stilted and brief, leaving Riley aching for the easy camaraderie they'd once shared. As challenging as things were at home, venturing out into the world was even more daunting. Riley's parents had explained the situation to her school, and arrangements were made for her to finish the semester through online classes. But she couldn't hide away forever. The first real test came about a month after her return home. Riley had been putting off seeing any of her old friends, too afraid of their reactions. But when her best friend Tyler texted for the 100th time asking to hang out, she knew she couldn't keep avoiding him. With shaking hands, Riley typed out a reply asking Tyler to meet her at the park near their houses. Better to rip off the Band-Aid in neutral territory, she reasoned. The morning of their meeting, Riley stood in front of her closet in a panic. What was she supposed to wear? All her old clothes felt wrong on her new body, but she balked at the idea of the feminine outfits her mother had bought. In the end, she settled on jeans and an oversized hoodie, an attempt at androgynous comfort. She paced nervously at the agreed-upon meeting spot, hands shoved deep in her pockets. When she spotted Tyler approaching, her heart leapt into her throat. Tyler faltered as he drew closer, confusion evident on his face. "Rye," he called uncertainly. "Is that you, man?" Riley winced at the masculine address, but nodded. "Yeah, it's me. Hey, Ty." Tyler's eyes widened as he took in Riley's changed appearance. To his credit, he rallied quickly. "Holy shit, dude. When you said there'd been complications at the hospital, I didn't think you meant this." He gestured vaguely at Riley's body. Riley hunched her shoulders, feeling exposed despite the baggy clothing. "Yeah, well, surprise, I guess." An awkward silence fell between them. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, clearly unsure what to say. Finally, he blurted out, "So, does this mean I can't call you dude anymore?" A surprised laugh bubbled up in Riley's throat. Of all the questions she'd anticipated, that hadn't been one of them. "I guess not," she admitted. It's Riley now, actually." Tyler nodded, processing this information. "Riley, okay, I can work with that." He paused, then added with a hint of his usual humor, "I guess this means you'll finally stop kicking my ass at basketball, huh?" Riley felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. Same old Tyler, always trying to lighten the mood. "In your dreams," she retorted. "I may be a girl now, but I can still school you on the court any day." Tyler grinned, the last of the awkwardness melting away. "Oh yeah? Want to put your money where your mouth is? First one to 21 wins." For the first time in weeks, Riley felt a genuine smile spread across her face. "You're on." As they made their way to the nearby basketball court, Riley felt a glimmer of hope. If Tyler could accept her like this, maybe things wouldn't be so bad after all. The game was a wake-up call. Riley quickly realized that while her skills and knowledge of the game remained intact, her body responded differently. She was slower, less powerful. Shots that once came easily now fell short. Tyler noticed her struggling and eased up, clearly torn between wanting to win and not wanting to upset his friend. But his pity only frustrated Riley more. With a surge of determination, she pushed herself harder, adjusting her technique to compensate for her changed physique. In the end, Tyler won, but only by a narrow margin. They collapsed onto a nearby bench, both breathing heavily. "Not bad, Rye," Tyler panted. "For a girl, I mean." Riley elbowed him in the ribs, but there was no real anger behind it. "Shut up," she grumbled good-naturedly. As their breathing slowed, a comfortable silence fell between them. Riley marveled at how normal this felt. Just two friends hanging out after a game. For a moment, she could almost forget everything that had changed. But reality couldn't be held at bay forever. Tyler cleared his throat, his tone growing serious. "So, how are you really doing with all this? It must be pretty intense." Riley sighed, running a hand through her hair, a gesture that still felt foreign. "Honestly, I don't know. It's like I woke up one day and my whole life had changed. Everything I thought I knew about myself is just gone." Tyler nodded sympathetically. Yeah, I can't even imagine, but hey, you're still you, right? Just in a different package. Riley wished she could share his certainty. I guess, but I don't know how to be this version of me, you know? I don't know how to be a girl. Tyler was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he shrugged. So don't be. I mean, yeah, you look different now, but that doesn't mean you have to change everything about yourself. You're still into sports and video games and all that stuff, right? Yeah, of course, Riley replied. Then be that kind of girl, Tyler said simply. There's no rule that says girls can't like those things. Just be yourself, Ry. The rest will figure itself out. Riley mulled over his words. Could it really be that simple? Just be herself? It seemed too easy, and yet... Thanks, Ty, she said softly. I needed to hear that. Tyler bumped his shoulder against hers. Anytime. That's what friends are for, right? As they parted ways later that afternoon, Riley felt lighter than she had in weeks. Tyler's easy acceptance had given her hope. Maybe she could find a way to reconcile who she'd been with who she was now. The conversation with Tyler marked a turning point for Riley. While she was still far from comfortable in her new skin, she began to approach her situation with a more open mind. Instead of fighting against every feminine aspect of her new life, she allowed herself to explore. She started small, experimenting with different hairstyles and accepting her mother's offers to teach her about skincare and makeup. To her surprise, she found she enjoyed some of these traditionally feminine rituals. There was something soothing about the routine of it all, and she couldn't deny the boost of confidence that came from looking put together. Clothes remained a challenge. Riley still gravitated towards comfortable androgynous styles most days, but she gradually incorporated more feminine pieces into her wardrobe, discovering that she actually liked the way certain outfits made her feel. As Riley became more comfortable with her appearance, she felt ready to venture out more. She started by reconnecting with a few close friends, bolstered by her positive experience with Tyler. While there were certainly some awkward moments and a few lost friendships, most of her true friends stood by her. School was a bigger hurdle. After completing the semester online, Riley knew she'd have to return to in-person classes eventually. The thought filled her with dread, but she was determined to face it head-on. The morning of her first day back, Riley stood in front of her mirror, scrutinizing her reflection. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a pair of well-fitting jeans, a soft sweater in a flattering shade of blue, and comfortable ankle boots. Her hair fell in gentle waves around her face, and she'd applied a touch of mascara and tinted lip balm. "You've got this," she told her reflection firmly. "You are Riley Cooper, and you belong here just as much as anyone else." The pep talk helped, but it didn't quell the butterflies in her stomach as she walked through the school doors. Whispers and stares followed her down the hallway. She kept her chin up, reminding herself that their opinions didn't define her. Her first class was English, taught by Mrs. Larson, a teacher she'd always gotten along with as Ryland. Riley hesitated in the doorway, unsure of her welcome. Mrs. Larson looked up, a warm smile spreading across her face. "Riley, welcome back, dear. We've missed you in class." The knot in Riley's chest loosened slightly. She made her way to an empty desk, hyper-aware of her classmates' curious gazes. As Mrs. Larson began the lesson, a note landed on Riley's desk. She unfolded it warily, relaxing when she recognized Megan's handwriting. Megan had been a casual friend before, not super close, but always friendly. "Love the sweater. Where'd you get it?" the note read. Riley smiled, scribbling back a reply. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad after all. The rest of the day passed in a blur of classes, awkward introductions, and curious stares. By the time the final bell rang, Riley was exhausted but proud of herself for making it through. As she gathered her things from her locker, a shadow fell over her. She turned to find Jack Reeves looming over her, a smirk on his face. Jack had always been a bit of a bully, constantly trying to prove how tough he was. Well, Jack drawled. "If it isn't Ryland the girl boy, or should I say Riley now, tell me, do you still have a dick or did they lop that off too?" Riley felt her face flush with anger and humiliation. She opened her mouth to retort, but another voice beat her to it. "Back off, Reeves," Tyler growled, materializing at Riley's side. "Unless you want the whole school to know how you cried like a baby when you broke your arm in pee-wee football." Jack's face reddened. "You wouldn't dare," he hissed. Tyler raised an eyebrow. "Try me." With a final glare, Jack slunk away. Riley let out a shaky breath. "Thanks, Ty." Tyler squeezed her shoulder. "Don't mention it. You okay?" Riley nodded, straightening her spine. Yeah, I'm good." As they walked out of the school together, Riley realized something. For the first time since her transformation, she felt truly grateful for her friends. They saw her, the real her, beyond the physical changes. That night, as Riley got ready for bed, she paused to really look at herself in the mirror. The face staring back at her was becoming more familiar now. She traced the curve of her cheek, the slope of her nose. Different, yes, but not bad, just new. "Hi, Riley," she whispered to her reflection. And for the first time, it didn't feel like a lie. The weeks that followed brought new challenges and small victories as Riley continued to adjust to her life as a young woman. She found unexpected allies and faced down lingering doubts, slowly carving out a place for herself in this unfamiliar world. One particularly memorable moment came during gym class. The teacher, unsure how to handle Riley's unique situation, had been letting her sit out most activities. But as the class prepared for a game of volleyball, Riley felt a surge of determination. She approached the teacher, squaring her shoulders. "I'd like to play," she said firmly. The teacher hesitated. "Are you sure? I don't want you to feel uncomfortable." Riley shook her head. "I'm sure. I can handle it." As she joined her classmates on the court, she caught a few wary glances. But to her surprise, Megan and a few other girls immediately welcomed her to their team. "Fair warning," Riley said with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm still figuring out how this body works. I might be a little rusty." Megan grinned. "No worries, we've got your back." The game began, and Riley quickly realized she'd underestimated the changes in her physicality. Her serves lacked their former power, and she misjudged her jumps more than once. But her teammates were patient, offering encouragement and tips. By the end of the class, Riley was flushed and sweaty, but exhilarated. She'd held her own, adapting her play style to her new capabilities. And more importantly, she'd been part of a team again. Not as Ryland or Riley, but simply as a fellow athlete. As they headed to the locker rooms, Megan fell into step beside her. "You've got some serious skills," she commented. "You should try out for the girls' volleyball team next season." Riley blinked in surprise. She hadn't even considered the possibility of joining a sports team as a girl. "You think?" Megan nodded enthusiastically. "Definitely. We could use someone with your experience." The suggestion planted a seed in Riley's mind. Maybe there was a place for her in this world of women's sports after all. Another significant milestone came in the form of a school dance. Riley had been avoiding such social events, still uncomfortable with the idea of dressing up and being seen as a girl in that context. But when Tyler asked her to go as friends, she found herself agreeing before she could overthink it. The night of the dance brought a fresh wave of anxiety. Riley stood in front of her closet at a loss. Nothing seemed right. Too feminine, not feminine enough, too revealing, too dowdy. A knock at her door interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Her mother poked her head in, taking in the chaos of discarded outfits. "Need some help?" she offered gently. Riley nodded gratefully. Together, they sorted through options, her mother offering suggestions without pushing. Finally, they settled on a simple but elegant dark green dress that brought out the color of Riley's eyes. As her mother zipped up the dress, Riley caught sight of herself in the mirror. For a moment, she hardly recognized the young woman staring back at her. But then she smiled, and there was Riley, nervous but excited, ready to face a new experience. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," her mother said softly, squeezing her shoulders. Riley met her mother's eyes in the mirror. "Thanks, Mom, for everything." The moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Riley's father called up the stairs. "Riley, Tyler's here!" Taking a deep breath, Riley descended the stairs. Tyler waited at the bottom, looking handsome in a suit. His eyes widened as he took in her appearance. "Wow," he said. "You look amazing, Ry." Riley felt a blush creep up her cheeks. "Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself." As they posed for the obligatory pre-dance photos, Riley caught her father's eye. He gave her a small nod, a hint of a proud smile on his face. It wasn't much, but it was progress. The dance itself was a whirlwind of new experiences. Riley danced with Tyler and their other friends, gradually relaxing and allowing herself to have fun. She even accepted a dance with a boy from her math class, surprised to find she enjoyed the butterflies in her stomach when he complimented her dress. As the night wound down, Riley found herself on the edge of the dance floor, watching her classmates with a sense of wonder. A few months ago, she never could have imagined being here like this. But now... "Penny, for your thoughts?" Tyler appeared at her side, offering her a cup of punch. Riley took a sip, considering. "I was just thinking. I'm actually having a good time. As me. As Riley." Tyler bumped his shoulder against hers. "Good. You deserve to be happy, Ry. However that looks for you." His words stayed with Riley long after the dance ended. She was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, there could be joy in this new life. It wasn't what she'd planned or expected, but it was hers, and she was determined to make the most of it. Thanks for watching. Check out Patreon if you want to have early access to the other parts. If not, it will be online in a couple of days.